will I get spinning circles? Oh, baby. Did I make it? Holy shit, I made it. I'm online. How did that happen? Wow. The trip. Okay. Now I am experimenting with chorus. All right. See how that goes. Get this real close, huh? Cool. Sounds different. Get used to it. Alrighty. Captured. Let's see. In the black water at the bottom of the well floated the Dogda and Angus Og. They looked up the smooth cylinder of rock to where far above High King Bress stood looking down at them. Sorry for the wet, my friends, Bress called down to them with a gloating smile. Let's make sure that I have turned on. I can see the mic, popping, but I just want to check something real quick. Been having issues with lag, and to be honest, I started wondering if my signal was being hacked, to be honest. And so I'm like, okay. But that is the reason why I don't have anything on this laptop. So if I do get hacked, there's nothing to get. Because everything I have is already uploaded online. That's why I do it raw. See? All right. Okay. Sorry for the wet, my friends, Bress called down to them with a gloating smile. But we've just no other place strong enough to hold the Dogda in. You know, I'd really like to thank you for making things so simple for me. I've always wanted to be rid of you. Now you've given me an excuse. You're much too dangerous to leave alive any longer. Just give me a chance at you, Bress. The Dogda raged. He grabbed at the rock walls of the well and tried to pull himself up, but fell back. Bress laughed. You're much too old and fat for such activity. You'll not climb up from there. I've heard the Furbolgs used this well for sacrifice. I'll dedicate your deaths to them. See, I'm going to pause there. That's why I say there were, let's just say, high-level magical practitioners that held honor and those that did not. And I feel those people were the ones that betrayed because they had the knowledge, the ability, and the know-how to set somebody up. But that's just my opinion. He started to turn away, then paused and looked back, adding as an afterthought, oh, and try not to thrash about too much down there. You'll last much longer. Bress, hold on. Bress! The Dogda's voice thundered, the booming sound echoing up from below. Bress ignored it, only grinning more broadly. As he turned away and crossed the yard to the main doors of the hall, there, Ain and Nuada and Lou waited, surrounded by a guard of Fomor under the command of Strang. All right, he said to them. Your companions are settled. I think we can go inside. What are you going to do to them? Lou demanded. Me? Said Bress with mock surprise. I'm not going to do anything. Anything at all. Now get inside. He signaled the guards, and they seized the three, forcing them along into the hall. Lou cast a final look round the fortress yard as they went through the doors. His mind was racing. What had happened to Gila? None of them had noticed that the clown had not been with them when they entered Nuada's room. He had apparently escaped capture and was presumably at large somewhere in the fortress. But could he stay free? And could he act alone to help them? Inside the hall, the evening's feast had long since ended. All the gathering had gone, and the vast room was largely deserted. The Famor marched them across the room to the king's dais. While Bress and Strang mounted it, the three prisoners were lined up in front. Lou noticed that, in addition to the half-dozen guards with them, there were perhaps a score more round the room. All were Famor. Bress noted the boy's curious gaze. I've sent all the Daydanon warriors down into the town to search for you, he supplied. I surely don't need them to overhear this little talk of ours. Oh shit, he's making a deal. It involved too many things best kept between us. And what about them? Asked Lou, nodding at his companions. You don't care if they can hear? Well, Nuada is of no importance. His knowing or not will make no difference. He's completely harmless. The old king shifted slightly. The lolling head rolled loosely back and forth, but stayed down. And Dane, said Lou, she's your own cousin. I believe she already knows my secrets. Bress stepped down from the dais and walked to Ain. He lifted a hand and lightly cupped her chin, pushing the head up, looking into her defiant eyes. You were the girl at the tower, weren't ya, my dear? She said nothing. You see, my agent, Negron, had already told me about your helping Lou, and your leaving Tara at the same time I did was very suspicious. When you returned, I had to watch you. I hoped all the time that I was wrong. I suppose you killed Negron too. She glared up, her mouth stubbornly set. He shook his head. What a pity, he said with faint regret. We seemed so much alike. I had almost hoped that... He broke off and shrugged resignedly. Oh well, too bad. He released her and stepped over to Lou. And now for you, young adventurer. He surveyed Lou, closely peering questioningly into those angry eyes. There is still something about you that nags at me. I have to know. What is it? I have to find out who you really are. Excuse me, Bress. Wait, excuse me, Bress, Strang said with concern, stepping from the dais to join the High King. I thought you understood I was to take him to Balor. Bress dismissed this with a negligent wave. He'll have the boy. but only when I'm through with him. Bress. Strain began in an argumentative tone. Bress rounded on the femur. His voice was hard. Strain, I am the ruler of Aya. This is my decision. Strain fell silent, but his look was hostile. Bress turned his attention back to Lou. I'm sorry, my best druids are gone from Tara, he said with a cruel smile. Remember, he had all the bards killed. That shit went on. People don't realize it. It was like the radio of the day, right? And if a king didn't like what you said, he would execute you. It was no joke. I'm left without their interesting little methods to make you speak. He glanced at Strain. Unless you have something to suggest. The Fomor are so practiced at causing pain. And that's all they can do. That is all they do. They have no love. All they do is cause pain. And that is their aim. Anyway, the Fomor captain eyed him sullenly. Then his eyes shifted to Ain, and his look grew bright and covetous. See, he wants her. I'll help ya, but I want the girl for it. I knew that was coming. Bress gave her an indifferent look. Why not? She's nothing to me. Oh, ow. That's his family he said that about. Holy shit. He looked at Lou as he added, when you're through with her, you can give her to your men. Damn. That's some harsh shit. That's what I'm saying. Without true love, what the hell is the point? There isn't one. Either true love or be alone. That's how I feel. Screw that. A flare of pain burned through Lou at that. See, that's going to bring out his battle rage. Protective love. Oh, shit. His face tightened with it. Bress noted it with satisfaction. See, they enjoy you being in pain and discomfort because that means they have power over you. Ha. Of course, if you would tell me what I wish to know, none of this would be necessary, he told the young man. I've nothing to tell you, Lou said stoutly. And this girl has nothing to do with me. Oh, shit. Is that true? Bress said with clear skepticism. We'll see, Strang. Do you think you have something to make our friend more pliable? Oh, I may have a method that will work, Strang said. I've something in my quarters that I'll need. Then fetch it, Bress ordered. We can't help our guests we can't hold our guests in suspense all night. In the well, the Dagda and his son were struggling desperately to climb out. The giant man was trying to use his bulk to bridge the width of the well. His feet pressed against one side and his arms braced against the other. With a massive effort, he remained wedged there, while Angus climbed upon his shoulders, trying to reach some climbable point further up. But as high as he could reach, the young warrior found only water-smoothed stone, without any handholds. Then, his own precarious hold slipping, the Dagda collapsed, slamming back down into the cold water, bringing Angus down on top of him. They sputtered up to the surface and tread water there, looking at one another with hopelessness. was clear that there was no way to escape. But remember, this is all about overcoming near impossible odds, right? And that is only through sheer will and not giving in. As they floated there, Angus tried not to think about the black depths below them. He heard of the sacrifices made in the well. Kept picturing the pile of white, grinning skulls mired in the slime at the bottom. They have certainly got us properly this time. The Dagda raged, his great strength for once made impotent. You don't need to be kicking me for your anger, Angus told him sharply. I didn't kick ya, the Dagda protested. Well, something hit my foot, Angus said, and then stiffened with a startled look. I felt it again, he said. So did I, the Dagda said, concern now showing in his face. Father, Angus said with rising fear. What is it? I've heard some tales. The Dagda began. About... But he didn't finish, for his head abruptly vanished beneath the water. Father, Angus cried, and dove at once on the spot. He struggled down into the depths, the chill rising about him. He stretched down arms before him, trying to reach his father, but his fingertips touched nothing below. Finally, he came up, gasping for air. The water round him lashed up wildly, as if a giant ladle was stirring it. Some struggle was going on far below, and he could feel the waves of water from down there sweeping up to him. He felt a stark terror rising up uncontrollably in him, a terror of the unknown depths of whatever lurked below, of his father's fate and of being left there alone. Then, with a tremendous upward explosion of water, something popped to the surface like a whale breaching, blowing out a great whoosh of spray. It threw Angus violently back against the wall of the well, and he clung there, staring wildly in the uncertain light. It took him a long moment to identify what was now thrashing madly on the surface. He recognized his father first. He saw the face set in rigid lines of strain, but somehow he seemed much larger, and it took another moment for Angus to realize with horror that his father was wrapped round with coils of something thick and gleaming. He could see that it was alive, like one muscle tensing, pulling taut. Then he saw the head lift from the water. He saw the flat skull, the tiny eyes, the wide slit of a mouth, and knew it was an eel. It was larger than any he had ever seen before. Its body was the thickness of a man's neck, and it had to be 3 times a man's height in length. That's almost 20 feet long. He realized it was a giant well eel, such as the Furbolg said inhabited the sacred wells of Ayr. But he had never believed their tales until now. His father had a grip upon it right below the head. His big hands pressed deeply into the scaly throat, squeezing. The arms tensed to rock hardness as he fought to throttle it. The beast seemed to be in distress. its free tail segment threshing so wildly about in the narrow space of the well that Angus could barely avoid being struck. He was forced against the side and trapped there to watch this mortal combat helplessly, wondering who would win. For his father, too, was in distress, wrapped in the tightening coils. His face was rapidly darkening with the increasing pressure. Slowly, steadily, relentlessly, the two powerful giants were strangling one another, and there was no way Angus could guess which one would finally succeed. Strang approached the High King, a large wooden case cradled in his arms. He stopped lifting a hinged, he started lifting, he stopped, okay, lifting a hinged lid to reveal the contents. With the box lay a strange looking device. In part, seemed to be a bow, very short and made of dull gray metal. It was affixed at right angles to a curiously shaped handle of metal and wood, set in an intricately worked mechanism that Bress did not comprehend. Strang lifted it out and passed it to the High King to examine. This is the bow of amazing power, he explained with pride. Our ancestors produced it long ago. It is one of the few of their weapons that we can still make work, and even it is growing rapidly more scarce. But with its construction, it can hurl a bolt like this. He lifted a short, thick arrow of gray metal from the box, with a force that will drive it through a shield and a man behind it. How can it be used to convince our friend to speak? Bress wondered. It is also very accurate, Strang said. A few bolts placed skillfully round or in the subject will usually bring the desired result. Very good, said Bress. He gestured to the guards. Then just tie the young woman to that roof pole. What? cried Lou. He tried to get to Bress, but the other guards seized him, pulling him back. Strang's face showed. He was taken aback as well. But you promised her to me. I know, Strang. Sorry, but we don't want the boy damaged, do we? As you reminded me, Valor might be unhappy about that. And the boy is clearly very fond of her, as I guessed. He tossed the bow back to Strang. Here, prepare this. Reluctantly, Strang did as the High King demanded. So they're going to point that at her and say, tell me or she dies, pretty much, I'm thinking. He took a leather quiver of the bolts from the case and slung it on one shoulder. Then he prepared the weapon by levering the heavy bowstring back and locking it into a hinged device. He selected a bolt, laying it carefully in a groove along the weapon's top, its tail touching the string. Meantime, Lou and Nuada were dragged back to clear an open space before the days, while two former bound Ain to one of the heavy roof pillars near the fire pit. As the guards stepped back from her, Strang lifted the bow and set the wooden butt end solidly against his shoulder, pointing the arrow toward the bound girl. A forefinger rested lightly against the lever, which would fire it. I'm ready, he said. Well, Lou, Bress said, will ya tell me now? Who are ya? Lou cast a desperate look at Ain. Her chin was lifted, her face set in defiant lines. She gave a small, Sharp shake of the head. Lou set his own face grimly and stared at Bress without reply. Bress shrugged and ordered, "Shoot!" The bow snapped with a hollow metallic sound. The bolt flashed to the target, thudding home in the hard wood of the thick post close behind or close beside her head, burying half of its length. "Not close enough," Bress remarked critically. "Prepare another bolt." Lou cast his gaze wildly about the room, searching for some sign of hope, some help. But there was nothing. He determined that he couldn't let Ain die. If there was nothing else that he could do, he would rather barter for Ain's life and tell Bress everything he knew. The only difficulty was that what he knew was likely not enough to satisfy the ruthless High King, which meant they were both doomed. An object dropped on the ground right at his feet. It landed noiselessly amidst the thick rushes scattered there, and no one noted its fall except for Lou. He looked down at it. It was round and smooth and white and looked familiar. And then he realized what it was, a clamshell. He looked up, searching round the room again. This time he saw the tall figure peering over the rail of the gallery above the dais. Gila saw that he had gotten Lou's attention, lifted a hand in a jaunty wave, and smiled reassuringly. Lou felt his heart lift. He didn't know how Gila could help, but he somehow felt new hope. "Shoot! Shoot!" Bress ordered again, and another bolt slammed into the wooden pillar, less than a finger's breadth from Ain's head. That's pretty close. That's like what, 1/8 of an inch? That's damn close. She showed no sign of fear. She didn't flinch at the impact. Still, Lou wasn't sure how long he could stand this. If Gila meant to act, it would have to be soon, and he would need help. The young man leaned closer to Nuada, who stood slumped, spiritless beside him, chin on chest, eyes staring at the ground. "Nuada," he whispered. "Nuada. Nuada, you've got to help us. Help us fight him. He's a traitor to you. He means to destroy all your people. Fight!" Bress noticed this. Smiling broadly, he strode toward them. "Don't waste your final breaths on him. That drunken wreckage. He and all his kind are nearly gone, and their great dream with them. Soon there'll be nothing left but my own power. I'll be my ire then. It will be my ire then." Push Nuada's head roughly back, looking into the bleary, blankly staring eyes. Then let it drop forward again. "He's finished." He walked away. Nuada stood as before, defeated and motionless. But there was one movement, one slight, unnoticed movement. Slowly, very slowly, the silver hand closed itself into a fist. Bress walked back to Strang. "I'm bored with this. I want to try it. Here, show me how it works." While Strang explained the device to Bress, Lou risked another look up toward Gila. The clown had now moved to the end of the gallery directly above a pair of Fomor warriors. Lou realized that he was planning to jump. Once more, the young man found himself questioning strange clown's sanity. Did he mean to try to rescue them all alone? Is this the way it works? Bress was saying, examining the weapon. All right, I think I see. Hand me some bolts. Strang gave him a handful, which the High King slipped into his sword belt. He loaded one into the weapon and lifted it toward Ain. Of course, I'm not likely to be very good with it, he said carelessly. It went off. The bolt slammed into the pillar, just touching her as it slid by her shoulder at the base of her neck. It had nicked the flesh, drawing blood. It flowed down onto the fine green material, making a startlingly bright stain as it spread. Lou nearly went mad with rage and only restrained himself by a massive effort of will. If there was any chance to escape, he couldn't ruin it with a rash act. He had to trust in Gila, and wait. Ain, stoic as ever, had herself shown no reaction, no sign of pain. Courage under fire, man. Well, man, of all skills, are you trying to tell me what I wish to know? Bress asked, fitting another bolt into the weapon. He'll tell you nothing, Ain answered for him, with determination. Fearful Lou might be weakening. See, she knows the internal process, that's her intuition she is using. Lou shook his head. Then this game is over, Bress said coldly. The next bolt will not miss. He lifted the bow toward her. Sorry, cousin. You'd best pray that this one kills ya quickly. At that moment, the doors to the hall burst open, and two figures charged in, disheveled and streaming water, but fired with anger and brandishing swords in either hand. It was Dogda and Angusog. Gila used their appearance to act himself. Leaping from the gallery, bringing down the two Fomor below him in a heap. It caused distraction enough, jerking the attention of every warrior in the hall to these attackers. But it didn't come soon enough to stop Bress from firing the bolt. No! Lou yelled as the bolt flew unerringly toward the fair, smooth, and vulnerable throat of the helpless Ain. Next chapter, back to safety. The bolt was only a spear length from its mark when a gleaming hand rose in its path. The bolt struck with a sharp clink, glancing off its smooth, rounded edge and driving harmlessly into the earthen floor. Nuada stood now before the girl, the silver hand upraised, a look of blazing hatred bringing the worn old face to life. Startled, Bress glanced round him to discover what had happened. All the Fomor guards had rushed to engage these three attackers. Strang moving to help those struggling with Gila, Bress was left to face his prisoners alone. Nuada went to Ain and seized her ropes with his metal hand to tear them loose. Bress cocked the bow with a savage move and slammed another bolt into the notch, planning to shoot him down. This time it was Lou's turn to act. He took 3 long steps and launched himself at Bress, hitting him in the middle as he tried to bring the weapon up. It was knocked from the hands and spun away as the two sprawled onto the floor. They rolled apart. Lou came up, meaning to pounce again, but a well-placed foot in the chest from Bress sent him backward. The High King sprang up, drawing his sword, his gaze focusing on Lou with a grim determination. "Boy, I don't care who you are. You are going to die right now." The Dagda, battling with Angus against a score of Fomor, saw the plight of his unarmed friends. There was no time to reach them. Instead, he swung back one arm and launched a sword in a long, high arc toward the old High King Nuada. Let's see. "Nuada, a sword!" he cried. Nuada saw it, raised his silver hand and caught the weapon in midair as the hand closed round its hilt. It was transformed as if the weapon had some magical power of its own. All trace of weariness and age fell away. You see how depression can age you and shut you down? I've been through that. It sounds like this author's been through some serious shit. He was once more the champion of old. And as Bress advanced on the defenseless Lou, Nuada stepped forward, bringing his weapon down to knock away the High King's first swing. Surprised by the intervention, Bress looked to him. "Now, Bress," Nuada said. Wow. His voice vibrant with a new energy. "Now try me." "Why, you old fool?" Bress grated. "You made a mistake coming to life. You'll die here with the rest." Pushed impatiently forward, as if he could simply brush the older man away to get to Lou. But the sword of Nuada moved to block him. Bress drove in again and again. Each time Nuada was there, his weapon parrying with speed and power. Bress now began measuring his opponent's skill with greater respect. Couldn't believe that this sudden hulk of a man could be so suddenly dangerous. Frustrated, the High King began a more heated attack. Nuada's years of inactivity and drink began to tell. The older man was growing weary. His veteran skill and aroused courage kept him stoutly fending Bress off, but he was having increasing difficulty. The young man looked desperately about. The others were putting up a splendid fight, but they were heavily outnumbered, and it was only a matter of time before the battle attracted more warriors. This rescue attempt, valiant as it was, seemed doomed to failure. "Hold, Bress," Ian's voice commanded sharply, cutting through the noise of combat. The High King glanced aside at her, then froze. In the confusion, she had been forgotten. Now she stood, not far from him, pointing the loaded bow at him very purposefully. "You gave me an opportunity to observe the use of this very closely," she said with heavy irony. "I'm quite sure I can fire it. Now drop your sword." He hesitated, his eyes darting round at the other warriors. "Now, Bress," she ordered coldly. or you're going to find your backbone cut in two. He believed her. All right, he said quickly and let his weapon drop. Now order the Famor to stop the fight, she said. He raised his voice and called to the others. All of ya, cease fighting! Cease fighting! The clatter of the weapons died. The Famor looked round toward Bress with curiosity. So did Lou's comrades, surprised by his sudden surrender. And now what? Bress inquired. I'd like to finish you, Bress, Nuada said, raising his sword threateningly. After all these years. Kill me, and none of you will leave this fortress alive, Bress promised in hard tones. He's right, Nuada, Lou said urgently. Killing Bress won't free your people. It will only see us killed and their last hope gone. Leave him. We'll return, I promise ya. The old king considered this as he glared at Bress, but then he nodded. You're right. Let's be away from here. Good, said Ain. Now, Bress, I think this nasty device of yours will ensure that we can at least leave the hall in safety. Move very, very slowly over to the dais and face me. Bress moved without argument, standing with his back to the wooden planks of the raised platform. Good. I can keep you in clear view until we reach the doors. Just stand very still and hope all of your Famor do the same. With Lou and Nuada beside her, Ain backed away from him slowly. The others joined them as they moved toward the doors, Ain keeping the weapon trained unwaveringly on Bress. You're mad if you come back here, Bress called after them. You're all doomed, and you, Lou. Someday we'll meet when you've no one to protect you. When we do, I'll have a sword of my own, Lou promised. They reached the doors without event. As they started through, Ain paused on the threshold and smiled maliciously. One last thing, Bress. Now you pray that I can aim. What? Said the stricken king. No, she fired, his eyes squeezed shut as he tensed for the impact. But when the thunk of the bolt came, he felt no pain. He looked for the bolt. It had gone home in the planking just below his groin, pinning him to the wood by the hem of his tunic. I think Ain's a good shot. Relief giving way to rage. He looked up to see Ain and the others disappearing into the night. Get them, he roared, yanking the bolt free. Sound the alarm. Don't let them leave the fortress. Outside, the little party was already running for the main gates at Gila's urging. What if the gates are locked? Lou asked. Trust me in that, said Gila. Just run. They ran halfway across the courtyard to the gates. The alarm went up, the clanging of the bronze gong that called the household companies to alert. Behind them, and then on either side, shouts were heard, followed by the sounds of running men and rattling arms. Lou glanced round him. Figures were visible in the darkness of the yard, growing clearer as guards converged from several points on the fleeing party. But ahead, the gates were now visible too. With a final burst of speed, they reached them before any of the warriors and found the massive timber portals standing ajar, just the width of a man. Lou noted 4 guards stretched out neatly on the ground beside them. Resting, Gila supplied affably and began pushing his companions through the opening. Last of all, Gila himself squeezed through just ahead of the arriving pursuers. The Dagda threw his bulk against the heavy gate, slamming it back into their faces. The first warriors were thrown back into those rushing up behind, and they were all knocked down in a single tangle. While they were struggling to rise, the Dagda seized a carved wooden ogham, twice its length and girth, and wrenched it from the ground. With a single heave of his massive shoulders and arms, he swung it round and wedged it tightly against the doors, effectively trapping the warriors inside the fortress. You're a most useful person, that you are, Gila told the big man, clearly most impressed. You're one yourself, the Dagda replied heartily. Saving us was a marvel. I only threw a rope to you, Gila said modestly. But the way you crushed that wild beast was amazing. It was that. As your sword work is, the Dagda graciously countered. I've seen few to match your skills. This is boosting morale right now. Nothing to match yours, Gila returned. I especially liked that angled downstroke. Pretty it was. Could we exchange compliments at some other time? Lou requested impatiently. Warriors were now beginning to beat on the inside of the doors. The lad is right, Gila conceded. Shall we get on? But not toward the town, Dagda suggested. There'll be warriors swarming up from there to answer that alarm. This way. He led them off down along a side of the great dun, into the countryside. They found a temporary hiding place at a hill north of Tara, sheltered in a small cluster of abandoned homes surrounded by a low wall of piled stones. They waited there, watching to see what Bress would do. The mist had lifted, its veil of modesty leaving exposed a naked, dead white moon to light the countryside. Scores of yellow torches were visible round the dune, shifting constantly at that distance like fireflies, swarming thickly upon a flowery knoll. The forces of Strang and Bress were scoring the hill and the town below. But none had moved their search toward the real hiding place of the group. Safe enough, Gila declared with satisfaction after observing for a time. They've no idea where we've gone, nor where we'll be going next. It's only for us to go now. What about food? Asked Angus. And drink. Especially drink, the Dagda added. I've enough for us, Gila assured them, with a knowing wink at Lou and a pat on the miraculous cloak. I've stocked myself up. And where is it we're going? The Dagda asked. To the mountains of Morn, said Lou. It's there that Diane Kecht is hiding with the other exiles. We're exiles too now, the Dagda said. Well, shall we be starting? That's up to the High King, I think. Lou answered, looking toward Nuada. All other eyes turned toward him as well. Nuada looked round him at their expectant faces. His own expression was grave, thoughtful. His gaze dropped to the sword that he still held. He hefted it. Then he shook his head slowly. No, Lou, not High King, he said in a low voice. Then his head lifted again, and they saw the smile tugging at his mouth, lighting his eyes. Not yet, he added with new decisiveness, but we'll give Diane Kecht his chance. Dawn found the travelers far north of Tara, crossing the countryside and avoiding all roads. It was not easy going through the thick woods and rocky meadowlands, and Gila complained loudly. I'm missing my little pony and my cart now, that I am. You know, it would only have slowed us, Ian told him. But a few horses would have been nice, the Dagda said wistfully. But it'd be a big horse for the Dagda. It'd be like a Clydesdale or something. He gave Gila a speculative look. You wouldn't have some tucked into the cloak of yours, would you? I hadn't time to steal any, Gila said, grinning. Bress's men will surely have them, Angus reminded them, without humor. They could still catch us easily. We're safe enough, said Lou. How could they guess which way we've gone? They've no need to, the Dagda said with sudden heaviness. We've forgotten one thing. He gestured upward. High above, a large, black shape sailed, broad wings outstretched. The Morrigan, Lou said, his heart sinking. And the Raven woman had seen them. As they watched, she blinked. As they watched, she banked into a broad, lazy spiral. The brought her swooping down lower at each turn. The shimmering glow of her transformation began on her final glide in toward the earth, and it was on human feet that she settled onto the ground. Before them, letting the fluttering cloak fall round her. She had landed at a safe distance and looked round her warily. She was not going to be taken by surprise this time. She looked them over with the intense black eyes. Then she spoke, the voice an ominous, dry crackle. The riders of the High King are waiting only. My directions to pursue you. You cannot escape them. If that's so, why aren't you about telling them? The Dagda asked suspiciously. Why come to us? She hesitated, her eyes shifting from one to another of them again. You aren't certain, are you, Morrigan? The Dagda said. You're not certain you're doing the right thing. I'm acting by my bond. I serve the king, she said stubbornly. but there was a tinge of doubt coloring her words. Morrigan, we want to serve him too, the Dogda reasoned. But the true king, Res is none. He's the traitor to us. He's not even holy Daedanon. For more blood runs in him. Prove that to me, she said. We can't. But we can do something else. Listen, Morrigan. We can restore Nuada's hand. We can put him back in the kingship. We can release you and all of us from all bond to Bress. We will be free, and we can unite against the Fomor. She said nothing, but her eyes were narrowed thoughtfully. She was wavering. Morrigan, we're making no attack on Bress. You'll not betray your bond to let us go. If we succeed, you'll gain salvation for our people. So remember, sovereignty of the land. If we fail, things will be no different. Only you can keep us from trying now. As if to herself, she said in a soft rattle, Free! To be free of him! Her hand rested lightly on her sword hilt. Then she grew stern again. Oh, here we go. All right, I will not betray you, she told the Dogda. For my old trust and love of you. And if you are right, I'll drink the blood of Bress myself. But if you fail, the powers help us both if we ever meet again. Then, in a sudden burst of light, she was gone. And you see, if Morrigan makes an oath, she will not break it. So that's 100%, right? As a group, but they have to fulfill their oath. They said their oath was they could restore Nuada. And she said, if you break your promise, you're all dead. And she means it. Then, in a sudden burst of light, she was gone. As the group looked up, eyes recovering from the startling glare, saw a black form, great wings, laboring to pull it higher, already soaring away back toward the south. She is a strange being, Lou said, looking after her. She is that, the Dogda agreed. He looked at Lou, an odd, sad smile on his broad, battered face. She was also once my wife. Wow. In his cavern, Diane Keck labored over his mortar and pestle, grinding out more roots to make a healing salve for a baby's rash, and grumbling to himself. He was so absorbed in his dreary self-pity that he was not aware of the party entering until a voice spoke. Diane Keck, it's time for you to put all your skills to work again. He looked round, unable, at first, to discern who his visitors were against the sunlight flooding from the cavern's mouth behind him. But he thought he knew the voice. Is that the Dogda? He asked in disbelief. It is, the man replied, and we've brought you something. He and his companions moved forward, and the old healer saw them clearly. He recognized all of them, but his attention was taken by the man who stood beside Lou, smiling at him. I understand you made some claim to this lad, said Nuada to the flabbergasted physician. I decided to come and see you make it good. You were always such a braggart in the old days. It's into that chapter. Next chapter, Nuada's hand. I'm just going to keep rolling. Gently, very gently with that, Diankek cautioned. From the clear, chill pool beneath the cavern floor, the hand of Nuada was being carefully lifted. Clouds of frigid vapor rose around the physician and Seagull as they arose. Gripping the sides of the netting that held the precious object, the hand rose clear of the hole, dripping the bright liquid in shining streaks back into the pool. Now to that table, Diankek directed. He and the little druid sidestepped cautiously to a table sheeted with what seemed bright silver, pulsed with a kind of inner light and through a fine white radiance, like a bright sun luminous in a mist into the vast, dim cavern. Beside this table sat another covered with layers of white linen. On this lay Nuada, motionless but awake and watching the actions of healer and druid with great interest. He was covered with another covering of white to his chin. His arm and its silver hand were exposed, stretched out to one side, so it lay on the glowing silver sheet. The metal hand seemed dull in contrast to the polished surface beneath it. Now, beside the cold, mechanical hand, the two men gingerly placed the reel, one in its fine net. The physician delicately pulled the mesh away from the hand, leaving it clear. We must move quickly now, he said to Seagull. Out of the liquid it will begin to decay quickly. If we don't succeed in restoring its blood supply soon, it will never function. Looked at Nuada. There is a risk, my king, he said formally. I want you to understand that. I do, my old friend. The reclining man told him earnestly. But our people are in greater risk now, and this may be our last chance to save them. It's time to prove to them and to ourselves that we are not finished yet. First, you must prove it, and then will come my turn. Turned his head to look aside at the metal hand. He smiled. You know, his hand has done me good service. I think I may actually miss it. Looked at Diankek. All right, physician. I am all yours now. You may begin when you wish. Just lie back then, Diankek said. Close your eyes. He nodded to Seagull, who moved to stand at the old High King's head. The little druid placed the slender fingers of his fine hands lightly on Nuada's temples, began a slow crooning chant. After a few moments, the body of Nuada began visibly to relax. The breathing gradually slowed to a shallow, even rhythm. He is asleep, Seagull quietly announced at last. Diankek had by now laid out a wide variety of small, delicately fashioned instruments, ranging them precisely along the edge of the glowing tabletop. The soft, unnatural light from it somehow bathed everything upon it in an equal wash of light that left no shadows. It seemed to glow through the severed hand, giving it a rosy blush of life, revealing its structure of bones and tendons and veins as darker lines. Seagull came back round to the physician's side. He looked down at the hand and then up at Diankek's face. his normally mild expression marked by his concern. He saw the tension in Diankek too, pulling deep furrows in the long face, drawing fine beads of sweat across the high forehead, narrowing the clear eyes behind the shaggy thrust of frowning brows. The druid laid a soothing hand on his comrade's arm. His voice exuded an assurance that he really didn't feel himself. You can do it, Diankek. The old healer steeled himself and drew his lean body up. His voice took on its normal gruff, uncompromising tones. Of course, Seagull, he said gruffly. Don't prattle on so. Here, help me with this silver hand. And as the druid carefully positioned the hand and arm of Nuada, Diankek chose a short, razor-edged blade and skillfully guided it to the flesh of the man's wrist. Outside the cavern, the little hand of adventurers who had brought Nuada there waited anxiously. Little band, sorry. The delicate task of the physician went on through the afternoon and into the night. As time passed, word began to spread through the hidden settlement about who had come, and the momentous event was taking place. Soon the inhabitants began to come up to the cavern to greet the arrivals and join their vigil. Gobnu, Brigid, and others came, happy to see their old comrades again, anxious to hear the tale of Nuada's rescue. By the time the sun pulled itself about the eastern mountains and spilled its first cup of light into the sheltered valley, the entire population of the settlement had gathered at the mouth of the healer's cave. Even the darkly brooding Bodurg had come to meet his father and brother and join the company, although he never ceased to pace constantly, muttering his gloomy predictions of disaster. Now, in the clammy dawn, those clustered round scores of comforting fires were settled into a silent company. They waited, their faces carefully neutral, not speaking for fear their fragile hopes might flit away like startled butterflies. They watched until at last, a figure became visible in the cave's dim recesses. It moved forward to the cave's lip, into the light, and they could see that it was Seagull. He stopped there and stretched himself. He moved stiffly, warily. He blinked often in the light of the sun as his eyes adjusted. Then he looked down at the crowd below him. It's finished, he announced in a voice of fatigued relief. The hand is restored. Lou let out a whoop of joy. Woo! And the rest of the gathering joined in, releasing the pent-up tensions of the night. But Seagull raised his hands for silence. When they had quieted again, he spoke in cautious tones. The hand has been reattached, but it has not yet been determined whether it has been done successfully. Nuada is awakening now. He wishes those who brought him here and all the rest of ya present when the final test is made. That way you can prove it, right? So follow me. Turned back and led the way into the cavern. Turn this up. There we go. The scores outside followed him, crowding through the entrance into the vast area beyond. Inside the cavern, the silver-topped table had lost its glowing light and was now reduced only a dull sheen. The physician's normal fires and torches were all that lit the room. On his own table, Nuada now sat propped up, awake again, while Diane Kecht stood beside him. With a brusque command, the physician stopped the crowd just within the entrance. He allowed only the party of those who had rescued Nuada to come forward and stand close round the old king. I don't see the need to make a public spectacle of this, Diane Kecht said disapprovingly. You should avoid any unnecessary strain. No, Diane Kecht, Nuada countered soothingly. I need them here. Their courage and belief brought me this far. It will help me make the final step. All of them were staring at the hand. It lay upon the coverlets beside the reclining man, bound from knuckles to elbow in a fine white cloth. They were staring most closely at the exposed fingers so long dead and frozen away, now pink with the living man's blood again. But could it function? Diane Kecht succeeded. That was the final test. It must pass. Nuada's face furrowed with concentration. He stared at the fingers, willing them to move. Nothing happened. The watchers exchanged side looks of despair. Had all their efforts been for nothing after all? Lou's heart plummeted. But Nuada had not given up. He was still trying, straining now with his efforts. And then, slowly, the fingers began to move. It was first a barely visible twitch. Then there was real movement as the fingers began to curl upward together. A sigh, like a first breath of spring wind, lifted from the company. They watched the fingers continue to lift jerkingly and then more smoothly, curling into a fist. Nuada clenched it, the touch of agony at the unaccustomed pain. But with a smile of satisfaction, too. Relaxed the hand, let the fingers fall back, then curled them again and again, each time more quickly, more easily. The smile grew wider. It was the first truly happy, truly confident smile Lou had ever seen him wear. He was ecstatic, like a child playing with a new toy, pumping the fingers open and closed. That's how I felt about the mic finally working. It works, he cried joyfully. By Danu, it works. Don't think Danu, Diane Kecht said without modesty. Thank me. He moved forward, laying a restraining hand gently on Nuada's, stopping the movement. But don't tax it too much yet. Let it rest. Let the joining heal. In a few days, you will be fully healed. You'll truly be a whole man once again. Then we will go back to Tara and face the traitor Bress. Nuada exclaimed. He pulled himself higher, and called to all those gathered, any who wish to may join us. We will all go and end his tyranny at last, and bring down the power of the Fomor upon us, Boderg said gloomily. It is madness still. It was you who said not long ago that Nuada would never be made whole, wasn't it? The Dogda reminded him in a scolding voice. And even if we were or destroyed, at least it will be as free men, fighting for our lands. Better that than the degradation upon us now. The Daedanons cannot fight, Boderg insisted doggedly. We are not warriors. We are craftsmen, artists, men of peace. No, Nuada shouted back. No, we are lovers of life, but we have earned nothing of life if we aren't willing to fight for it. He smiled at Lou. We have to do it for ourselves, or we are nothing. This boy has taught me that. Looked back to his gathered fellows. My spirit is alive. Is yours? Do we fight? Aye, we do, said Gobnu. And the others there joined in a loud cheer of assent that echoed triumphantly in the cavern. Loud cheer of assent. Boderg said no more, but deep misgiving still filled his brooding look. Then we'll go together, Nuada declared. He looked again to Lou. And you, lad, will match at our front as one of our champions. That you've won the right to do. Lou exchanged a glance with Aang. He understood clearly the message in her eyes. He nodded his agreement to her. To the companions round him, he said, I'm very honored by that, but I've a bond of my own I must be fulfilling first. I'll put it off as long as I may. I'll be leaving tomorrow. Leaving? Angus said, surprised. What for? I have an appointment that I must keep. Has to do with my whole destiny. Wow. It's tripping me out. Like, the synchronicity of this book is just in my life for tripping. It's tripping me out. If it's your bond, you must go, the Dagda said. And it's not for us to be questioning it, but you'll be missed. I'll return, said Lou. I promise that. With luck, I'll meet you at Tara when you return there to face Bress. I hope so, lad, Nuada said with great intensity. We owe you a great deal. You've restored my life to me along with my hand. You've given us all new hope. Whatever happens to you now, we'll not forget that. He's right, Lou, the Dagda agreed heartily. He stepped close and clapped a huge hand to the young man's shoulder. You're one of us now. Whatever else you are, good fortune to you. Abashed by this warmth, Lou looked about him to find the others of the gathering were beaming in open friendship. He felt a closeness to them, as though he really was a part of them, as if they were a family to him. It's because they are. But he saw Ain and was reminded that his life was not yet his own. It was time to make it so. Dankek shooed the company out of the cavern then, to let Nuada rest. Lu parted from the Day Danons and made his way back to Fingol's lists, accompanied only by Ain and Gila. We may as well prepare to leave at the next dawn, he said resignedly. Dalta is nearly recovered. He looked round at the clown. But what about you? What will you do? Gila smiled in his unaffected way. Why, don't you know? I'll go with you. With Dalta still needing rest, you'll need a pony cart like mine to carry her. And I'd not leave you now. Your company is too exciting. Lou smiled. I thought the excitement here would be more to your taste, but I'm very glad you're coming. I'll welcome a friend with me. He looked at Ain. If it's all right for him to come, she shrugged. He's earned his welcome. She looked the clown over and added in joking speculation. I'd like to see Gila and my brother meet. Too much strange beings together would be an entertainment. Gila laughed, but Lou remained quiet, his expression growing more somber. Now that he was truly going back, he felt a vague tremor of concern. This finding out of his own identity, his place in life, had been put aside in his need to act. Now that it was done, the need to learn the answers to his questions began to take on vast importance once again. He realized that he was anxious to go to face Mananan and finally be free of all the uncertainties. That night, after all preparations had been made, he stood again with Ain on the hillside where they had talked those few long days before. The sun was just settling behind the western plains, and the grassy meadows were like a rippling sea of gold. I hope I can return to Ayr, he said, but I wonder if I'll ever see it again. Is my life linked to it in some way, or will I, or what I learn will take me on some other path? Only Mananan can tell you that, she said. I know, he agreed. I'm ready to go back. You told me that the last time we came here, she reminded him. She turned toward him, took one of his hands and clasped it tightly in both of hers. This time, I'm making sure you don't change your mind. He looked down into the fresh, bold face, the wealth of hair and bright eyes, both touched with the sunset's gold. He forgot his worries about what would come and pulled her to him. If you want to make certain I'll not slip away, you'll have to stay close, very close, he said. She met his gaze with a challenging one. I'd rather tie a bell to you, she said. And that's the end of that chapter. And we are on, let's see, book 4. Oh, gonna get exciting soon. The Answerer. And I think I only have, let's see, like 3 chapters left, short ones. But I want to finish this out strong because this is going to be a really good battle. So to make sure. So tomorrow I will commit to finishing the rest of this, and then I will start the next book. See? You know, sometimes you spend a long time kind of like with Nuada, right? Kind of being in depression, you start to wither and shut down. And for him, reclaiming his honor and his place was paramount to the point of being, I think he'll end up sacrificing himself, because I know the story of Nuada and I know that he died in the final battle against Balor, right? But to him, to die with honor after being restored would be worth it to him. That's how big of a deal honor used to be. You look at your average man today, and it wouldn't even come close to that level of loyalty and honor. I'm sure there are some guys, and I'm saying at one point that was most likely commonplace, right? With that said, I got to watch that 2-hour mark because I lost something like, I don't know, 40 or 50 minutes of content. And then another video, I lost content as well. So it's dropping my signal. So either, you know, oh, that sounds trippy as shit with the chorus. Wow. Yeah. Well, the final battle's coming round, and the king's restored to say he's ready for the battle. His head's not hanging so low. It's not so low anymore. Come back, you know, and restore the true king. Oh, Morgan circling above, Morgan. Sovereignty of the land, goddess of sovereignty. Oh. Spirit of the land, rising we are. Sovereignty of the land, so reach deep, gotta reach deep down, oh, gotta reach deep. It's time for a champion to rise. Time for a champion to rise. 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 Feel it on the wind. Your trouble coming down, you know. Your trouble on the wind, hey. Mahogany circles overhead. Shining wheel. Folk soul, living memory. Rough as I am, I know. True to the core. It's true-hearted all the way. All the way. True is the heart of love. Reaching way, way deep down to say, oh, deep down, you know, rough as I am, I know it's only one way, and that's true love. Tribe and family, oh, reaching way deep down with the heart of a champion. Whether that be a woman or man, you know, harmony. Sure as the pouring rain. Can't rain all the time. Can't rain, can't rain, can't rain all the time. Can't rain all the time. There's a crow rising up from the ground. One day it's gonna come on back to stay. Come on back to stay. Crawling up from the ground. But true love came back for love. So I can say tree flaming well. So way heart and soul, folk soul, living memory. Oh, how the story goes, how the story goes. Oh, oh, call the heart of a champion. Honor is supreme. Love is true forever.